All right, Ashlyn, let's take a look at your essay. So, we have not talked a whole lot about integrating quotes yet, so I'm not going to ding you on it right now. But when you integrate a quote, let me talk about a few different things. Actually, let me take this and then bring this into Microsoft Word. Okay, so typically with quotes, you want to integrate. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I want to change something with your quote a little bit. You want to integrate with who the author is, and then you want to then have the quote. So this is a good quote to choose with Neil Stephenson, especially given what he does. So I know he's a science fiction author, but I think he specifically does speculative fiction, which is really good because when you talk about mass hysteria, and especially given the fact that we've read The Crucible, it's a real good quote to use. So if you say speculative fiction author Neil Stephenson stated that we are all susceptible to the pull of viral ideas like mass hysteria or attuned, blah, blah, blah. No matter how smart we get, there's always this deep irrational part that makes us potential hosts for self-replicating information. This is really good, and I especially say this because when you integrate quotes, you don't want to do it with a dash and just have the quote and then have a dash, whatever. So, one thing you can do as well, and I'm not dinging you on this at all, but sometimes with a quote, there are components of it we really want, but I think especially in the early stages of writing, we kind of just bring in the whole quote and leave it there. But I think you can shorten this up, and you can do that using an ellipses. Because the main thing I think that will improve your quote is getting rid of this that I highlighted, because it's still examples. Oh, hold on. But I think because you're going to talk about we are hosts for self-replicating information, and I think those are the two strongest things. So putting the ellipses here shows that there is information between these two quotes, but but this is the part that you're choosing, and I think that's just a stronger way for the quote. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but that's just something I want you to consider because it is kind of a long quote, and I think you can just have it. And I think just reducing a little will help you. And you explain mass hysteria, which is good, and say it's demonstrated in the Crucible. Whenever you have a comma, you want to make sure that you have the spacing. So there's some random spacing typo concerns, it looks like. In many cases, mass hysteria popped up due to fear, jealousy, just plainly believing something heard or seen in the media, even though it may not be true. And then you talk about media being the main driver in creating mass hysteria throughout the world. Okay, so this is a pretty good thesis. It's the main driver in creating mass hysteria. Um, so overall, this is pretty good. I think your hook is good. I think your thesis is good. What I would say, I don't think you necessarily need to bring up the Crucible here unless you're going to give more details on it. I see this with a lot of you where I don't know if it's just because we read the Crucible that you all are putting in that you need to put in the introduction, but you don't necessarily need to do that. But anyways, your quote almost had me believe that we were going with it being human nature, but I think what you may want to do is add some more information about how this relates to media in particular, because you just have it a little bit here with, well, we can believe something heard or seen in the media, even though it may not be true. And what you're saying is true, but I think you have all this other information that doesn't necessarily build up to this being about media. So maybe have a little bit more there, but. Alright, so as we move on to your first body paragraph, I want to say that I would get rid of this. I don't think it's a good topic sentence because you're kind of defining examples of media, which doesn't really do justice to what this paragraph is about, which is about misuse of information. So if you get rid of that and say something along the lines of Many times media contributes to mass hysteria because the words seen or heard on these, because what the media puts out spreads information that is not always true. Something like that would be a little bit better because you want your topic sentences to be more so about what. Sorry, let me start over. Your topic sentence needs to be what the paragraph is about, and yours is about information, and that's not how you start it. And I'm seeing quite a few people do this, but you don't need to define media because that's a pretty common definition. And then right here, we've got a little bit of the run-on. So I want to talk about that for a second because you can split this up. For example, Clinton was accused of being a witch, which spoiled her plans of being president of the United States. Period. Well, here's the thing. She was accused of being a witch after she was blamed. She wasn't really accused of being a witch. It was a witch hunt against her, as the author put it, of that article. So it's not the same thing there. So let me just pull this up in Microsoft Word. There we go. So, for example, Hillary Clinton, who's pretty infamous with... Oh, and then when you do this, I know we all know what the United States is, but you do need to put in anything that has an abbreviation. You do have to spell out first. And then now that I put this in parentheses, you can do that later. Who was pretty infamous with the United States in general, was accused... And because she wasn't really accused of being a witch, we can say was the focal point of a witch hunt. And I'm only getting rid of the witch because you have, these are pretty long sentences which don't, oh, I have the wrong witch, which get a little bit distracting because what you had before is all one sentence anyways. And then you could say this witch hunt, what is with my keyboard? This witch hunt spoiled her plans of being president of the United States. And because we already did that, here I'm going to make it US. After she was blamed, well, hold on. After she was blamed for the 2011 terrorist attack on the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi while she was the Secretary of State. I think you can just make that as a period and be fine with it. Even though the accusations pressed against her were not true, considering she warned that the embassy budget cuts were detrimental to America's national security. Because you have this introductory clause, even though you do not need this conjunction here, you just need a comma. Yet the public ignored that warning. This is a better way of setting it up. You just had this as one long sentence, so setting it up something like this will be a little bit better and just make it a little bit more clear. I still think you may want to put the Benghazi thing a little bit before the witch hunt, but that is your choice. But overall, as we move forward with that, you talk about this example and how it spreads false information, and then important news and reliable information is often displayed in many types of media, but sometimes what is publicized is dangerously misleading. We see the spacing concern again there as well. I think this does a good job of having some evidence in your paper, Ashlynn, but I think you need to do a little bit more with some evidence. Tie it back specifically to media being the driver of creating mass hysteria. So even with this Clinton thing, maybe we get rid of a sentence or two and talk about how media drove that, because there are things in the article that can give you that perspective. But overall, you do have a good, this part right here is a good way to end your paragraph. You just need some more analysis. And then as we move on to this paragraph, what I just said, I think holds true here. So hysteria cannot occur in large numbers throughout a city or town unless long-distance communication like newspaper is acquired. I don't know if acquired is the best word, maybe utilized or used, I'm not sure, but I'm going to leave that be. Other than that, all of this is evidence. All of this is evidence, and this right here is demonstrated hysteria spreads quickly and quite effectively from area to area through different routes of communication. So with this is your only piece of analysis, and you really want to make sure that you are taking your examples and breaking them apart to be like, in the Pokemon panic, maybe just saying, this panic spread across the world as a result of the television. Um, Having this access to media caused the hysteria to spread, and we have not had this hysteria in the United States because of its ban, something like that. And then even with the Coke thing, I'm not sure what the Coke example is doing, resulting really the only other explanation, mass hysteria. This one, I'm not sure exactly how this is relevant to media because, well, no, I do see what you mean. And the information also spread across Europe. But because you say this information led to a 10-day ban of it, you need to put that it spread across Europe first, because then that implies because Europe got this information, it caused the ban to happen. But as this reads of it, the ban happened and then Europe found out, so it doesn't really have to do anything other than people in Belgium blamed Coke and then they banned it. So you need to add some more analysis in there. Okay? And then as we move on into your last body paragraph, while media is effective and very powerful in causing mass hysteria, aren't people the ones bringing it into action without the aid of media? You do have a contraction here that I want you to be aware of. You do not want those in your paper. And with topic sentences, you really want to avoid questions at all costs. You can put them in your hook in your conclusion, but I would avoid it altogether. And especially with the way you set this up, aren't people bringing it up into action without the aid of media? Because this is your paragraph where you're bringing up the opposition, your goal is to still refute it. So you just want to have a topic sentence that says, even with something along the lines of, even with media's mass influence, some people look at human nature as the root of it, because having a question like this kind of says you as the author, you're kind of looking into that as the perspective of it. And with that in mind, you have 3 examples for the opposition. So your opposing side, you have, hold on a second. With the paragraph, what you want to be cognizant of is, with the opposition, you still need to integrate evidence analysis that supports your claim. So don't use as many examples of the opposition. Throw in some things about how media is more potent, and especially what you want to do with your position that you have taken on the essay. You need to do something along the lines of, yes, this is human nature. However, as we see with media and this increasing, it spreads to people quicker or something. So you're still bringing it back. And then finally, we are at your conclusion. Based on the multiple cases of mass hysteria documented throughout history, it can be safe to say that most are caused by many forms of media. Pretty good, and that's the kind of thing we need in the opposition thing right there. Media is the main driver. Many forms are spreading throughout. Blah blah blah. Hillary Clinton suffered from accusations rooted. Instead of saying rooted from, you want to say rooted in. People tend to spread untrue information, blah, blah, blah. It has become such a big part of our daily lives, and I bet that many people, as well as myself, have wondered if the vicious cycle will ever stop. This is where, with the conclusion, I'm okay with the first person being slipped into here. So that's fine. And I think it's a good way to end the thing, because that's where you really want to draw your reader in, as being, well, do we think that the cycle will ever end? So overall, I think your conclusion is pretty good. So other than that, I think you have some contractions, some run-ons, and some spacing concerns for the grammar portion of your essay. Your word choice is pretty good, but your style falls a little flat at times because of the run-ons, and you have good evidence. I think there's just moments where you definitely need to do some more analysis to kind of bring that to light a little bit more. So, if you want to do a rewrite, you absolutely can. You don't have to. That is your choice, and you're not even going to see this rubric until not right away. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Overall, Ashlynn, the paper is pretty good. I think you're just missing some of the analytical components of it.